There is an experiment that has been conducted thousands of times in living rooms and laboratories, and the result is always the same. A person leaves a room, and something happens to a dog's brain. Not something vague, not something poetic, something measurable, chemical, neurologically specific, something that neuroscientists can now point to and say, that structure, that molecule, that pattern of activation. And what they found has forced some of the world's most rigorous scientists to ask a question they once considered unscientific. Does a dog love you? Not, is a dog loyal? Not, is a dog affectionate? But the deeper question, the one that changes everything, is what happens inside a dog's brain when it looks at you fundamentally the same as what happens inside a human brain when it looks at someone it loves? Because the answer, it turns out, is far more complicated and far more extraordinary than anyone expected. For most of human history, the question wasn't even considered worth asking. Animals, the argument went, don't feel love. They form attachments. They exhibit bonding behaviors. They release hormones that promote social cohesion. But love, with all its richness, its longing, its recognition of another individual as irreplaceable, that was reserved for us. Then, in 2015, a neuroscientist named Gregory Burns published a result that quietly changed the conversation. Burns had spent years training dogs to lie still inside an MRI scanner, voluntarily, without sedation, without restraint. And what his team discovered inside those scanners was not what anyone was prepared for. When dogs were shown the scent of their owner, not a stranger, not another dog, specifically their own human, a particular region of their brain lit up consistently and powerfully. The caudate nucleus. The same structure that activates in humans when they anticipate something they deeply love. Not food, not play, not reward in the general sense. Their person. Now here is where it gets genuinely fascinating, because the caudate activation tells us something important, but it doesn't tell us everything. The brain responding to something is not the same as the brain feeling something, and this distinction matters enormously. What Burns and his colleagues were careful to say, and what makes their work so credible, is that caudate activation suggests positive anticipation. It suggests that the dog's brain codes the owner as something deeply meaningful, something associated with reward at a neurological level that goes beyond simple conditioning. But does that mean the dog is experiencing love the way you experience love? That question remains genuinely open, and the more you examine it, the stranger and more remarkable it becomes. To understand why, we need to understand what love actually is, not poetically, but neurochemically. In humans, love is not a single thing. It is a constellation of systems. Dopamine pathways driving motivation and desire, oxytocin promoting bonding and trust, vasopressin supporting long-term attachment, serotonin stabilizing mood in the presence of a loved one. Dogs have all of these systems, not metaphorically, not approximately, structurally, chemically, functionally, the same molecules operating in homologous brain regions.
If you find yourself asking these questions about what dogs experience, what they feel, what they understand about us, you're not alone. This channel exists for exactly that. Subscribe, and we'll go deeper together. Here is what I find most remarkable about this particular mystery. Wolves, the ancestors of every dog alive today, are not bonded to humans this way. A wolf raised from puppyhood alongside people will still maintain a fundamental social distance. It will not gaze at a human face for extended periods. It will not seek eye contact as a form of communication. But a dog will. In fact, when researchers at the University of Budapest tested dogs, wolves raised by humans, and human children on the same battery of social cognition tasks, the dogs performed more like human children than like wolves. Not because dogs are smarter than wolves, but because dogs are specifically adapted to us. They read our faces. They follow our pointing gestures, something even chimpanzees struggle with. They monitor our emotional states with a sensitivity that is almost uncomfortable in its precision. Evolution built dogs to love us. Or at least, and this is the distinction science requires us to hold carefully, evolution built dogs to exhibit every behavioral and neurochemical signature of love with such consistency that asking whether it is real starts to feel like asking whether any love is real. There is one more piece of this puzzle that changes everything. In 2016, Hungarian neuroscientist Attila Ondex and his team trained dogs to lie in MRI scanners and played them recordings of human voices, happy, sad, neutral, in their native language and in unfamiliar languages. What they found was extraordinary.
And every single measure we use to infer love in other humans, the brain activation, the hormones, the selective attention, the behavioral prioritization of one individual over all others, every single one of those measures, dogs pass. Perhaps the most extraordinary thing about all of this is not what it tells us about dogs, it's what it tells us about love itself, that it may not be uniquely human, that it may be something older than language, older than consciousness as we understand it, something evolution discovered and has been refining in different forms across dozens of species for millions of years. And in dogs, shaped by their extraordinary journey alongside us, it may have found one of its purest expressions. Not because dogs are simple, but because they are exquisitely, specifically, profoundly adapted to us. Every time your dog follows you from room to room, every time it rests its head on your knee, every time it watches the door for you hours before you arrive, something real is happening in that brain. Whether we call it love depends on the definition, but the experience behind it is not nothing. And that brings us to the next question, one that follows naturally from everything we've just explored. If dogs can feel love, what else are they feeling that we don't yet have words for? Because the deeper scientists look inside the canine mind, the more it becomes clear that the question isn't whether dogs have an inner life. The question is how different and how similar that inner life is to ours. And that may be the most unsettling, fascinating mystery of all.